Mr. Speaker, we live in uncertain and dangerous times with ever-evolving terrorist threats. The brutality that ISIL has inflicted on innocent people is both chilling and demands action. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility to do all we can to protect our citizens. In the wake of the Paris attacks, questions have been raised about the screening system that U.S. citizens on whether it can be exploited by terrorists. In light of those questions, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from former Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano and former Secretary Michael Chertoff supporting the current system of vetting refugees.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent days, however, we've seen a number of governors, including the governor of my home state, choose fear over facts. If they had done their research, they would have learned that our program is an extensive 13-step process. It starts with a referral from the United Nations of a pre-screened person within its refugee camps, requires the Department of Homeland Security to do in-person interviews and subjects each applicant to recurring vetting against the Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, FBI, Department of Defense, and intelligence community terrorist and criminal databases. No excuses, Mr. Speaker. Any one of those reviews pops up with a problem, that person can't be considered for the refugee program. No excuses. Unlike in Europe, where migrants crossed into the countries that had little opportunities to vet them, no alien is allowed onto U.S. soil until all the checks are completed to DHS's satisfaction. And as already been said by my colleague, Zoe Lofgren, it takes about 18 to 24 months to process an applicant for refugee status. Now, that processing is thorough, Mr. Speaker, it's complete, but there's been a reference to a stolen passport in the Paris situation. That person, if they had applied for the refugee program, would have had to go through the same process of vetting that would have required at least 18 to 24 months. So the thought that that person could just get on a plane and get here to this country is actually not accurate, and that is my effort to perfect the record. Our system of vetting is a multi-layered, multi-agency approach where the FBI has veto authority on any applicant seeking refugee status. While no system is risk-free, the protections in place in the American system are rigorous, robust, and extensive. In fact, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, a witness that the majority invited to appear before our committee, Matthew Olson, the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, told our committee, no refugee program in the world is as extensive as what we do in the United States. Yet here we are today, considering H.R. 4038, a bill that would upend the current system, which was developed by security personnel with one thought in mind, to protect the homeland. And these security personnel, they've done a wonderful job. To the knowledge of all of us, none of the refugees that we're talking about from Syria or Iraq who've come through this system have done anything but been model citizens since they've been here. Just for the record, there were 23,000 people that applied for refugee status from these two countries. Of those 23,000, about 7,000 were actually interviewed, and of those 7,000, only 2,000 were admitted. So, Mr. Speaker, our system is robust. It works, and it speaks to our values as Americans. I'm proud to say that people who are abused, people who are oppressed, can still look to this country, follow the rules, and if those rules are properly applied, they can look to America as somewhere they can call home, because most of those individuals applying for refugee status can't go home. Once again, I call on members to embrace facts over fear, Mr. Speaker, and vote against H.R. 4038.
The time of
With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
gentleman has